Well, howdy. I'm out in the garden here, and I got these plants out, and they're set up, and we're gonna feed them, and we're gonna talk a little bit about fertilizer. This one here in the middle doesn't look that happy, the way the leaves rolled. Anyhow, it says in the instructions to water from the top the first few times, and I think the main reason for doing that would be to make sure your soil is well moistened and that the mixture in the reservoir can wick up properly. And so ordinarily I probably would wait, because these plants were just soaked at the nursery. I mean, they were way overwatered, and that's probably what's causing the leaf rolling on this one here. But I brought out a bucket of nutrients, and yeah, they're blue. That's okay. They match my buckets. So I'm gonna water these up, and I have 3 gallons of nutrient solution here. I'm gonna put a gallon through each one, and I measured this with my TDS meter and my pH pen, and so right now this is about 450 parts per million, and the pH is 6.2, so it's not a real heavy feeding, but it's enough to get some nutrients into the cocoa, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. So I figure the best thing to do is water it around the edge. And so we'll all get about a gallon of water, and most of that should perk down and fill the reservoir. This will help settle the cocoa down. I talked in my other video about why you want to use cocoa, but you can use anything you want. You know, I mean, it'll all work. Just some works better than others, and not everybody gets the same results from the same things. So anyhow, these are getting watered in. Anyway, so far I am not seeing these little rods rise up much. I have everything in the back, so it's a little bit harder to see. The reason I did that, purely for vanity purposes. I really didn't want to advertise for Lowe's. These planters are out in front of my apartment. I kind of figured it'd be a little less tacky to have it in the back. Out of patience. So we're just gonna dump it in, get rid of it. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about is a couple of things. First is I did talk about why I think cocoa is a better growing media. It's your choice. You can use cocoa, you can use a peat-based media. Either one will work. The thing about cocoa, it's kind of a strange animal, and it holds on to certain nutrients more than others, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's not. So the thing about cocoa is I always pre-treat it before I plant anything, because what you want to do is get calcium and magnesium in there. I use Cali Magic from General Hydro, and there's other brands, but I found that one to be the best. Now, I use that to prime my cocoa. I add about 300 parts per million of that when I'm soaking my cocoa, because I use the bricks. I don't buy the big bags. I buy bricks. You throw them in a bucket with water and they swell up. And I really recommend, if you're going to use cocoa, use Canna. It's the best out there. If you buy cheap cocoa, it could have a lot of salt in it, and you'd have to leach all that out or it would ruin your plants. So if you're going to use cocoa, use canna. Okay, and then you'll want to pre-treat it with a little bit of CalMag if you can. Like I said, Cali Magic from General Hydro. It's pretty cheap. You can get it on Amazon. And the other thing is that during the time the plants are actually growing, you will still probably need to add magnesium. And the cheapest way to do that is to get Epsom salts from your grocery store, drugstore. Half a teaspoon will raise a gallon of water, 300 parts per million. That's the most you would ever want to put in one of these buckets at a time. And your plants probably wouldn't need it every time you fed. The thing is, magnesium is in the center of the chlorophyll molecule, and when your plants get short on it, they get yellow leaves, kind of like what this pepper has. And it may be that too. I don't know. Like I said, they came from the nursery. I didn't raise them. I don't know what they fed them. I don't know how well they took care of them. I know they watered the shit out of them. So, and they were sitting in the shade, so that's not really a good thing. So what I do is I add Cali Magic when I'm making up my cocoa, and then I use some during the growing season, but once I'm more into flowering time and fruiting time, I go over to the magnesium sulfate because the plants don't need the added nitrogen that's in there. The CalMag formula has some nitrate nitrogen, it has calcium, it has magnesium, and a little bit of iron. So all in all, it's good, but when plants are fruiting, you want less nitrogen. And so that's what I'm going to talk about right now. I used this here. This is Jack's Classic Blossom Booster 10-30-20. It has everything in it. It doesn't really have calcium in it though, but it does have magnesium. This is a product that commercial greenhouses use, unlike Miracle-Gro, which is, you can use Miracle-Gro, but honestly, it's garbage. They use cheap, really cheap ingredients, and they use a lot of urea, which is hard for plants to take up. And I hope this video is showing, because it's so damp out here, it's fogging up. You want something that has a profile like this, because these are fruiting plants, so you want more of the phosphorus and potassium than you do of the nitrogen. I don't want to insult anybody, because I don't know how much any of you know. Some of you are probably advanced, some of you are just starting out, but the three numbers you see here is N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And when you're flowering stuff that fruits like peppers or tomatoes, you want a low nitrogen number, which is the 10, and a higher phosphorus number, which is the 30, and a higher potassium number, which is the 20. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly like that. It could be 10-20-20 or 10-30-30 or 10-20-30, but you get the idea. You cut back on the nitrogen. So this is readily available on Amazon, and it's not real expensive, and a little goes a long way. And you can use something like this. This is really good for tomatoes and stuff like that. So okay, so that's out of the way. Now the next thing I want to talk about is what kind of nutrients to use. Now these here are synthetic. Now if you're organic, I'm going to tell you right from the get-go, don't use organic nutrients in here. Now, I am not against organic growing. I was growing organic vegetables back in the 70s when we were considered a lunatic fringe. So, I'm not down on organic, but to everything, there is a season. And these plants are sitting in a bucket. There's a gallon of water in the bottom, and it's going to get warm. And if you're putting organics in there, it's going to get warm and it's going to grow bacteria. And more often than not, it will grow bad bacteria along with maybe some good, but you run the risk of getting Pythium or Phytophthora root rot because they're water molds and they grow in warm water that's not moving, and you are risking getting that because these plants will eventually get through the insert and they will put roots down into the water. And if you're running a mineral-based nutrient, there's nothing for the bacteria to feed on really. So you eliminate a lot of your problems. The other thing that I would really recommend as a preventative, no matter what kind of nutrients you're using, I would use a teaspoon of 3% hydrogen peroxide. And that's the stuff you get at the grocery store. It's 3%. You use a teaspoon per gallon and at the most, and you would put that into your down your feed tube every 3 days or so. And what it will do, it will kill any bad bacteria in there, and it also will aerate your roots, which plants really like. So that's a preventative. It's cheap, it's easy to do. You can get a bottle of that for $1 at the dollar store, and it'll probably take you through the whole gardening season. So there's that. And then you're just going to feed these. Normally, what I would say, because these are constantly being fed, because the roots are, there's water pumping to them all the time, I would probably start out, no matter what brand of nutrients you're using, I would probably start at half the recommended amount and look at your plants and see how they're doing, because you don't want to burn your plants. So these are all gonna be updated on a regular basis as they come along. I'm hoping, they say it's going to warm up and the sun's going to come out, and that would sure be nice. I have been using SIPs for a while and I didn't even know it. If you can see these plants here, these are my carnivorous plants and they are in a SIP. It's a little bit modified because these plants like to grow in a swamp. So there is a hole drilled. You can't see it because it's between these two planters. This one here, I just set some new plants in, so it'll be a while before it catches up to the other one. But these both are designed to fill with water. On this one, you can probably see the drain hole right there. So what I do with these is I'm keeping a high water level because these plants need a lot of water, but yet you don't want them to be flooded. So it will hold water. In the summer I have to fill it most every day or every other day because they drink a lot. But it does work, and it is a variation on a SIP. And I really like these plants. I like the unusual. So anyhow, you have that there. And these girls here, well, they might be girls and boys. I'm so used to thinking cannabis, you flower the girls, cut down the males, but these are just plants. They're unisex. So I will keep updating on this, and till the next time, take care of yourselves. Happy gardening. Give this a try. You'll be happy. All right, take care. Stay green.